NBC News Chief Washington Foreign Affairs Correspondent Andrea Mitchell and the former Commanding General of the U.S. Army Europe, retired Lieutenant General Ben Hodges. Andrea, let's begin right with the breaking news. The President of the United States has just spoken about Zelenskyy.
Well, he's just posted and on Truth Social, and certainly one of the reasons I was coming on to talk to you about this, and one of the reasons we wanted to talk together, Jose, is that was a real tell from J.D. Vance that they are putting pressure on Zelenskyy to accept this, frankly, very one-sided proposal that the U.S. made last week. And European leaders have been saying, and certainly Zelenskyy has been saying, Zelenskyy wanted to, well, did accept the 30-day ceasefire. Russia only accepted a one-day, 30-hour Easter ceasefire, not the 30-day ceasefire. But the U.S. proposal was for basically Russia to be able to keep Crimea, which it took in 2014, and also NATO would never be an option for Ukraine. Well, the president has just joined in and really upped the ante by saying Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is boasting on the front page of the Wall Street Journal that Ukraine will not legally recognize the occupation of Crimea. There's nothing to talk about here. This statement is very harmful to the peace negotiations with Russia, in that Crimea was lost years ago under the auspices of President Barack Hussein Obama. This is, of course, the language used, on Truth Social by President Trump, which is to demean both President Obama and Zelenskyy. He says that it's not even a point of discussion. Nobody is asking Zelenskyy to recognize Crimea as Russian territory, but if he wants Crimea, why didn't they fight for it 11 years ago when it was handed over to Russia without a shot being fired? The area also houses for many years before the Obama handover major Russian submarine bases. It's inflammatory statements like Zelensky's that makes it so difficult to settle this war. He has nothing to boast about. The situation for Ukraine is dire. He can have peace or he can fight for another 3 years before losing the whole country. I have nothing to do with Russia, but have much to do with wanting to save, on average, 5,000 Russian and Ukrainian soldiers a week who are dying for no reason whatsoever. The statement made by Zelenskyy today will do nothing but prolong the killing field. Nobody wants that. We are very close to a deal, but the man with no cards to play should now finally, all caps, get it done. I look forward to being able to help Ukraine and Russia get out of this complete and total mess, all caps, that would have never started if I were president. This is basically throwing down the gauntlet to Ukraine, and it is a post that mirrors what happened in the Oval Office last month. It is putting all of the pressure on Ukraine when Ukraine has accepted a 30-day ceasefire, Russia has not, and saying that, yes, Crimea, that territory, does stay under Russian control. It is a very one-sided negotiation, and Zelenskyy is potentially going to face the kind of repercussions he faced last time, a month ago, which was the cutoff of intelligence and military aid, and a tremendous setback, especially the air defenses that only the U.S. and not Europe can provide. I think I'm really eager to hear what the Lieutenant General has to say, General Hodges, but from a diplomatic perspective and from what I know about Ukraine and having covered all of this for years, this is a real turning point.
And Andrea, I wonder if I could just stay with you a little bit longer. We'll, of course, speak with the General in just a minute,
yeah.
But so the President's reaction was very clear. And then add to this what the Vice President said, add to this these negotiations or meetings that were canceled from the highest level. We don't know how far down, these meetings were canceled. But in the art of diplomacy, Andrea, which you know better than anyone, holding meetings with warring sides is in and of itself a statement or a message. Canceling meetings with the two sides, or in this case, one of the two sides, is also a very powerful statement and message.
Absolutely, you got it right. Because, the Ukrainians are in London, available to meet. Keith Kellogg from the United States is there, but not Steve Witkoff, not the U.S. Secretary of State. And Witkoff is going on for what will be his 4th meeting with Vladimir Putin, according to Russian officials. So this is all very lopsided. And as you can see from this Truth Social post from the president, it is all on Zelenskyy, blaming Zelenskyy for the war when he was invaded.
And Lieutenant General, so let's talk about that, because the blame towards Zelenskyy is something that seems to be one of the most favored things that the administration, from the president to the vice president on down, enjoys doing. This whole issue of Crimea, Lieutenant General, why is Zelenskyy so clear on the situation in Crimea? And I'm thinking in 2014, when it was illegally taken by Russia, even though the world did react and the world did oppose it, in a de facto way, nothing was really done.
So, thanks, Jose. First of all, it's seeing Secretary of State Rubio, the Vice President, and the President all scrambling away from this disaster that they created as fast as they can. You know, they're washing their hands of it. Remember, the President said 24 hours, we're at the 3-month mark, and now they're tired and they're giving up and walking away. That's probably the best thing that could happen to Ukraine, is to get this administration out of it. The approach by the administration was doomed from the start, because they either never understood or never cared about the history, the geography, or what's going on here. To say, when the president says the Ukrainians are fighting for no apparent reason, they're fighting for their survival against a country that invaded them. How can the president of the United States say the democratic country is fighting for its survival, is fighting for nothing? And Andrea is exactly right. I mean, from the beginning, this has been 100% pro-Russia. The fact that Mr. Witkoff uses Kremlin talking points better than Lavrov is all that we need to understand. Now, what's also missing in the American calculation here, and I think part of the reason that President Zelenskyy is standing firm, not only on the fact that this is the sovereignty of his country, but it's also the fact that Ukraine, according to General Cavoli, the Supreme Allied Commander, in his testimony to the House and Senate Armed Services Committee 3 weeks ago, Ukraine is actually winning on the battlefield. This war has been going on 11 years, including 4 years of the last Trump administration, and Russia has no way of knocking Ukraine out of the war. So Russia would never live up to any ceasefire, and there's no way there's going to be negotiation unless there's a ceasefire with a force to compel Russian compliance. So I think President Zelenskyy sees he actually is in a pretty strong position, and I think the Europeans also realize that it's in their interest that they help Ukraine, otherwise they'll be dealing with the consequences.
But, Lieutenant General, there is a stalemate in the battlefield, and that stalemate hasn't been moving much. What leads you to have any optimism that just on the military side, Ukraine can continue with the status quo without massive U.S. support, intelligence, military? Where do you find the optimism there?
Well, the map that you just showed earlier is a very good map. That's what the battlefield looks like after 11 years of fighting, with Russia having every advantage. That's all that they've been able to get. And frankly, American support has dropped off to almost zero in the last several months, including intelligence support. So Ukraine is achieving this without strong American support. And to be candid, the Biden administration failed miserably to actually try and help Ukraine win. They never even said, we want Ukraine to win. So the support from the U.S. has always been underwhelming and inadequate. The key is, can Europe step up, and other countries? I mean, Japan just said that they're willing to help provide some of the long-range intelligence that would be required to help Ukraine to fill some of the gap that the U.S. is going to leave. Look, the Ukrainians, they're fighting for the survival of their country. Vladimir Putin never, ever has stepped away from his stated objective of destroying Ukraine as a state, or the idea of Ukraine as a state. Ukrainians understand this. They see that. It's our arrogance that prevented us from fully understanding that.